It's Thursday, the 29th of October, 2020, and we want to welcome you to a Tilt webinar with Catherine Ritz, Retooled Practices for World Language Proficiency. I'm Helen Myers. I'm chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning. At this point, we always say thank you to Heike Philp, who gave us a lot of training into how to set these things up, and also to Linguoscope, who always supports everything that we do. The most important convener of this is Joe Dale, who's with us, and I'll hand over to Joe to introduce himself. He will introduce Catherine later on, but first of all, a word about you, Joe, please.
Thanks so much, Helen, and it's lovely to be back with the old team after a couple of weeks off. It's fantastic for our latest Tilt webinar, and delighted that Dr. Catherine Ritz has joined us this evening. But a little bit about me. So I'm an independent languages consultant, at the moment making my living through webinars. This is my third professional webinar today, so I'm a little bit zoomed out, but it's all good. And I am available, believe it or not, for being contacted about any sort of support that you would like via webinars, remote, hybrid, or face-to-face ideas around the use of technology and languages. I have put 18 example sessions, as I normally do, in the chat. So if you feel the need to contact me and to discuss possible webinars, then do get in touch. I would love to hear from you. And over to you, Helen, to carry on with our fantastic webinar for this evening.
Thank you. So I will do a little plug for the Association for Language Learning. If you are in the UK, please join us if you're not already a member. If you are a member, could you write that in the chat, please, now, and encourage people to join us. It's a great association. You get a magazine every term, a nice glossy magazine written by members. So if you join us, you could be that person in print. And we have an annual conference. It's just a great organisation to belong to. If you're not in the UK and you belong to another language association, perhaps you'd like to advertise that now. As far as any links are concerned to any past webinars or this webinar, on the ALL London site, each webinar is given a page, and on that page there's a link to Joe's YouTube channel where he will put the video, but we also put in the chat and links to any of the other resources. So please do take a look at that. And in particular, can I point out this? We've put together what's a webinar database link. And really all I've done is just copy and paste the titles, the description of the sessions, and all of the details about the presenters. And then you can do a search to find anything you want. So thanks to Joe and his massive worldwide, universe-wide network, we've had loads of great sessions, so you'll find what you want there, I'm sure. Coming soon, what have we got? Well, as far as ALL is concerned, on Wednesday, next Wednesday, we've got the November Roadshow conversation, and that's where Stephen Falk, Susie Buell, and Judith Rifeza will be talking particularly about issues to do with, it's mainly to do with things which are going on in the UK in languages, but we welcome everybody, and it's great to see you. And then on the Friday the 6th of November, particularly for people who are training in languages or in their first year, that's a newly qualified teacher or an RQT, a recently qualified teacher, just come along, relax, join in and share online. We have about an hour where we just share little chats, and we have a little bit of a breakout group. We draw ourselves. Do you want to talk about the other webinars that are coming up, Joe? Because I know there's one other which is not mentioned there.
That's fine. So we've got two really exciting webinars coming up. So we've got Jamina Lisitra. I presume that's how you pronounce her name. She's been really active on Twitter recently, and she's going to be sharing some of her favorite tools at the moment. Things like wakelet collections and deck toys is another one, which I know that she's a big fan of. So she's going to be absolutely fascinating, I'm sure. She's based in Madrid, and she teaches, I think, German and English, if I remember correctly. And then we have Linda McLean, who's from Scotland, who's going to be talking all about her story about dealing with lockdown. And she's a Microsoft Teams fan, and she's going to be talking about all the different ways in which she's been helping her children. And so, yeah, two really fantastic webinars to look forward to.
Great, thank you. So we have an etiquette, which you'll have seen at the beginning. Basically, we're nice and we're friendly, and we're happy to host speakers and participants free of charge, and speakers and participants are responsible for what they say. Now, again, back to Joe then for the last two slides to introduce Catherine. Sorry, Dr. Catherine Ritz. Sorry, I got I didn't.
It's all good. So I think I'm right in saying I met Catherine back in 2011 at the AATF in Montreal, which was the first conference I had done in North America. And yeah, and Catherine is absolutely lovely. We met up again at one of the ACFLs as well, the American Council of Teachers of Foreign Languages. I've been following Catherine for years and years and years, and I was really delighted when she accepted the offer of doing a Tilt webinar. So Catherine has taught at secondary school level, K-12 level, and now for a couple of years has been at Boston University. She's got her PhD now, so she is Dr. Catherine Ritz, and she's also the past president of MAFLA, the Massachusetts Association, Language Association as well. And I think what's fascinating about Catherine's situation is she's teaching, my understanding is she's teaching hybrid. In other words, she's teaching face-to-face, but also students, are being zoomed in or beamed in at the same time. So she's having to deal with teaching remotely as well as face-to-face in the classroom. So I can't wait to hear how she deals with that as a challenge and hearing about her story. So over to you, Catherine, and thank you so much for accepting our offer.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I just want to make sure everyone can see it. So I'm delighted to talk to everyone about this topic and some of the ways that I've thought about retooling my practice since this insanity world that we're living in right now began. So I'll just share a little bit more about myself and my kids. As Joe said, I'm now at Boston University, so I shifted from K-12. I was mostly high school teaching French and Spanish, and was also the program director as a department head in a public school district, and then shifted into teacher education. So this is now my 4th year at Boston University, where I'm running the Modern Foreign Language Education program. So now I'm working with people becoming foreign language teachers, which is really awesome. Although it's been a huge challenge since March, as I think it has been for all of us. So I'll share a little. We were chatting before the webinar started a little bit about what's happening in where Joe is in the UK, in the public schools there. Boston University came up with what they call a learn from anywhere model. So the students are able to choose how they attend our classes. So it's very student-centered, but definitely presents a lot of challenges for the faculty teaching. So the methods course that I teach on Mondays, the students can choose to attend in person or be zoomed in. So we actually only had one. I had one, the very first class we held in person, or I was on campus, and I only had 3 students of my class of 15 in person, and the rest of them were on Zoom. And we have to wear masks and everything, and everyone agreed we felt like this would just work better on Zoom. So we only did that once, and then we switched on to Zoom. And I surveyed the students again and said, do you want to go back to the classroom? And everyone said no. So I think it's like dancing and juggling at the same time model is really, really challenging. What's happening in the US where I am, every school I think is handling it slightly differently. So the big urban schools, so Boston Public Schools has gone fully remote now. My sister lives in LA and they're fully remote. But then the town that I live in Concord, Massachusetts has a hybrid model. So which means my son is going in 2 days a week and then he's Zooming in the other 3 days. And every hybrid means something different for everyone. So it's been very challenging as I'm working with students and sort of helping them navigate the way that they're student teaching. Yeah, the other quote, I see the quote, dancing and juggling at the same. The other thing I think it's being a parent who's working from home and taking care of your children at the same time. Like, it's just like you're not doing either one really well. So very challenging. But so that's a little bit about sort of where we are. And so I think my sort of progress, I think March, I'm sure for all of us, was just like a complete shock to the system. And we were all just sort of trying to figure out how to manage it. And then I taught a summer course, which was kind of new going in, would be fully online. And that was actually a really good chance for me to regroup and rethink what I was doing. And then this semester have tried to put into practice some of those things that I learned over the summer, and also trying to help guide my students who are in, student teaching placements around the state. So that's just a little bit about me and sort of what my context is. And what I was hoping to do this evening was share a little bit about sort of what's kept me going, like what my essential principles are as I'm thinking about, my own classes as well as the classes my students are going to be teaching. I should say I have students of Arabic, Chinese, French, and Spanish. So they're working in different contexts from elementary through high school, and actually have two university language professors also that are in my classes. So I have a range of contexts, and we're all trying to sort of navigate how to adapt to this new reality. So what's sort of my keeping me going, and some of the things I've learned in dealing with hybrid and virtual, and then thinking about a couple really essential pieces that have sustained me. So thinking about building class community, independent learning tasks. So when students are home, how can we make sure that they're successful? So that's been a big change in my practice since this all began, that I found really helpful. And then rethinking, supporting, the three modes of communication. And there's one model I want to share with you all that has really, really helped get me through, and is one I've come to rely on more and more, that really supports the three modes. So that's sort of what I was hoping to walk everyone through with this evening. So feel free to pop questions in the chat as you go. I do have it open, but I know we'll wait until the end if there's sort of bigger questions. So just some of the big principles that sort of no matter what, in person, hybrid, or virtual. I mean, some of the things I'm always coming back to is just, communicative, proficiency-based instruction, no matter what. And I felt strongly, like in March, our students lost a lot of educational time. And so now that we're back with them, whether we're back in person or hybrid or fully virtual, I just feel so strongly that our students really deserve this. And, we owe it to them, as hard as it is, to really keep a focus on proficiency-based instruction, and not revert to maybe more traditional grammar-based models that we know don't really support our students as much as possible. So for me, that means, I'm using the language 90% or more in the, providing input to students, authentic, meaningful input, even if I'm meeting with them on Zoom. Really focusing on supporting communication, so interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. Interpersonal, if you're remote, is obviously one of the hardest ones to accomplish, but that's really kind of a driving focus. And then lots of opportunities, as much as possible, to help the students interact and communicate purposefully in the target language. So that's sort of what no matter what, that's always what's driving me in my practice. But then I think about sort of the hybrid virtual. So what are some principles that may be slightly different? So some of the takeaways that I've had is really, first of all, like I've learned the organization. If kids are working at home, and I say this also as a parent watching my 3 children, so sort of having like really clear, organized material. I think that's been, as I'm watching teachers shift from regular in class to online, being extremely organized is, that's a challenge for many. So things that are well structured and well organized is needed more than ever. Keeping it simple for students, so just like reducing and simplifying instructions. I don't want to say lowering expectations, but just simplifying expectations and making things maybe like more manageable chunks for students if they're working on their own at home. I think consistency and routine. So we know that routines in the classroom are so key for students, but I think it's even, maybe more important when you're online. So whatever learning platform you're using, so I've tried really hard to be like, okay, I'm always I use Google Classroom as my learning management platform, but everything, for every sort of week that we're going through, I try to like name things exactly the same so that students know exactly where to look and what things are called, so that they're not confused about how do I find this or where do I get that. So just like a consistency and a routine. And also I'd say like the tech tools that you're using, having a couple like key ones so that they really learn how to use them and might not get overwhelmed with like all these different, there's so many out there, but sort of having a couple key ones that really do what you want. I think that really helps support our learners. And then if there's a new activity, maybe modeling it with them so they know what to do, and then reusing that type of activity. So there's a consistency for students. I think scaffolding, of course, we know this is so important no matter what, but I've just seen like with going online, the students need scaffold more than ever. It's just, and I would just remind people, I think you are a scaffold. If you're in the classroom with students, you are a scaffold for them. You're a support for them. You're enabling them to do something that they can't do on their own. So you might not be there with them if they're working on this at home. So having a scaffold, having paper scaffolds and other types of scaffolds is so important. And the last thing I want to just stress, with which I've really taken to heart with shifting to more virtual and hybrid teaching, the importance of making sure that what we're sending home to students is multimodal, and I'll show some examples of this. But if you're sending, and I always think like in the analogy in the classroom, if you were handing out an activity or directions for students, you would never just kind of give them the paper and not say anything and just expect that they would read it and figure it out. You would be handing out the paper, you'd be orally saying what they need to do. You might have visuals that you're showing them on your overhead or whatever. That's all multimodal. And then when we're sending stuff home to students to work on independently, embedding audio, embedding a video of yourself, giving the directions of whatever it is that you want to do, I think is really, really important to support the students, so that they're not just like getting this thing that they have to read and figure out. They're getting the thing they have to read with an audio explanation. And so just keeping that in mind, I've seen that really make a difference for learners. So those are some of the things that I'm really thinking about that sort of kept me going and helped me focus my instruction as the way that I'm working with my students who are out there in the field, working to learn how to become a language teacher right now. So I'll talk a little bit about the building class community. I think I picked a few things that I thought were particularly challenging and really essential for this new reality. But building class community, it's so important, and I think is extra challenging when you're working with students remotely. I definitely have found this to be a challenge for myself, and I've seen a lot of teachers really struggling with this. I've heard from lots of teachers, if you had the same cohort of students you had the year before, so you already had a relationship with them, that can carry over. But if you're dealing with a new group of students and you're really only meeting them on Zoom or wherever, it can be really hard. But having a positive classroom community, so it's all really where we want our students to feel welcome, included, and valued. Some of the key words when we're thinking about class community, so just being emotionally and physically safe, supportive, engaging, that students feel welcome and visible in your classroom. Sense of community, it's equitable, we have some shared values, and a sense of belonging in your classroom. So I think the most important takeaway is just taking the time to build the community. I think it's almost like a pay now or pay later. So if you want to take some time at the beginning of the year to really build that sense of community in the classroom, it will have benefits throughout the year. So getting to know the students' names and using lots of activities to help students share and however you're meeting with them. So this has been sort of a really big piece for me in finding some success in this new world. So right now I have, as I said, I had only 3 students that were in person that first day of class, and then we went on Zoom. And then there's another class that I'm teaching that's fully online. And I know one of the big struggles people are facing is getting the students to put on their cameras if they're online so you can see them. And that certainly from the teacher's perspective helps. You feel like you get to know the students, but from the student's perspective, they may feel very uncomfortable putting on the video. So sort of helping invite them to share their camera and help you get to know them is really important. But so that routine, so what are our expectations if we're meeting virtually? These are the 3 that I have sort of honed it down to. For me, this is where it ends. I want respectfulness. Just keep your mute on or yourself muted until it's time to talk. And I invite them to turn on their video. So it's not something that I'm requiring, but I put it up as a reminder, like this is our expectation. And then it's, but I'm understanding if a few students really just are not comfortable yet. Just thought I'd share a couple others that some other teachers have developed that have a little bit more information, but sort of establishing that expectation of here's how our community is going to work together. I thought I'd share this really nice example from a teacher in Massachusetts, Rebecca Bluewolf, who was the actual teacher of the year in 2020. I just love this example of having students sort of write their own goal for the year and, take a picture and put it on a Padlet, which can be, private just for that class. Just a way to help get to know the students virtually and help them share a little bit about what their goals are in the class. So it's another way to just build that community with them. And then this is something that could be brought up again as the year goes on to support the students. The other kind of retooling I've done is shifting my icebreaker and getting to know you activities to what's going to work on Zoom. So what are ways that we can interact in a fun, non-threatening way that will help build some community and still use the target language, hopefully, on Zoom. And so have done a little work thinking of, okay, what are some of the things? So I thought I would just share a couple examples of some Zoom breakers that I've really enjoyed and had some fun with my students. So the first is virtual backgrounds. I have a virtual background on right now. So having students choose a virtual background from another country or from wherever, if you could travel wherever, and then have them share why. That can be a fun way to get them sort of talking in a non-threatening way. Would You Rather is a game, my kids are playing all the time. So 10 questions, 5 or 10 questions, whatever. Would you rather be hot all the time or cold all the time? Would you rather be able to jump super high or run super fast? And students can just do hold ups, 1 for the first one, 2 for the second, or something along those lines. It's a fun game. It seems to be all the rage with the kids around here. But just sort of finding ways to get the students to respond. And this could absolutely be done in the target language, maybe with some images if you think they need the support to understand them. I've also tried, so turn-in talks has been one of the most frustrating things that it's hard to adapt to Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, whatever platform you might be using. So, because obviously in class we do turn-in talks a ton. That's sort of one of the go-tos for so many of us. But I've done some rapid fire turn-in talks. You can set up with obviously breakout rooms on Zoom. One of the things you can do is move them automatically. So there's breakout rooms, you can set the settings so they can join when they're invited, or you can automatically put them in. So if you choose the automatically setting, they go right in, and then I'll be like, okay, you're going to turn and talk about, tell your favorite sports or whatever, your favorite kind of music, and then put them in the room, and then immediately click close rooms with a 60-second countdown. So they 60 seconds, and then they come back, and then I delete the rooms, have all ones staring out, and do a new question and a new turn and talk that way. So that's been a fun one to get the students able to chat with each other in a really quick little format. That's also kind of fun and interactive. So that's sort of my best adaptation of the good old turn and talk. Sort of like a social emotional check-in, so sort of one word, so using a sentence frame. I feel, however, my favorite thing to do on the weekend is blah, blah, so whatever your sentence structure you want to use is, and then having every student share just very quickly and just give a one word, complete the sentence with one word. I think it's really important on Zoom to get every student to talk at least once. So I'm hearing a lot of teachers say, oh, there's only 2 students speaking. So finding some low stress ways to get every student to at least have their voice heard, I think is really important in helping support that. This was one I used a lot in the classroom, last photo. I would do this a lot after vacations, where students are coming in and they can't just want to see their friends and tell them what they did if they haven't seen each other in a while. So it would just be, get out your phone and whatever your last photo on your phone is, and you're going to turn to your partner and share the photo with them. And obviously I do an opt out. If you'd rather not share a photo, you can just tell us, your favorite thing or whatever. But students really enjoy this one, and it's done in the target language. So obviously this one could be done through the breakout groups in Zoom, and just pick your favorite most recent photo on your phone that you would like to share. Or an adaptation also, so it could be, what would you have taken a photo of if you had your phone with you? That's been a really fun one that the students enjoy and can, I think, work pretty well over breakout groups. And then I've used this one also, nothing in common. So I'll put students in groups, like 2 or 3, maybe 4 at the most, and give them a list of topics and say, okay, you have like 2 minutes to come up with as many things that you all have in common. And you can give them categories like, okay, favorite foods, favorite or foods you like, favorite movies, etc., or just really leave it open, and they have to come up with a list of things that they all have in common. So that's a nice way to build a sense of community and like help them get to know each other and maybe realize they have things in common with each other that they didn't know they had. And then, so those are just some of the favorite ones. Obviously, there's tons of different ideas out there, but just really thinking about ways to help build that sense of community. And then I think a big takeaway as well, as I've touched on already, is like when you're online with the students, if you're seeing them virtually, it's harder to build the community, and I think it's harder to sustain it. So doing those types of activities maybe more than you would if you were in the classroom with the students all the time will make a difference. So just keeping that up as much as possible so that they can feel comfortable. And I heard someone was sharing before we started, if schools have been in person but might shift remote, students might experience a feeling, if you're meeting with them on Zoom, like, I haven't done this before, I feel uncomfortable. So using sort of these like lower pressure ways to make them feel comfortable, I think that's something that I've seen really make a big difference. So I want to share the other piece that's been one of the game changers for me is thinking about developing sort of independent learning tasks. So if students are home on their own, working on whatever, how can they do that successfully? Obviously, there's equity issues in terms of students having access or not to Wi-Fi, to computers and technology, and so on. So I acknowledge that this really would work if the students do have access, but so that's a sort of another layer of challenge that I know different school districts are trying to address. But so an independent learning task for me, the way that I've been setting them up is I use Google Slides and just developing a hyperdoc, which is essentially a slideshow for the students to kind of work through that has embedded links and videos, so the multimodal piece that I was talking about. So everything they need to complete the task at home is embedded in there. And then I'm trying to think really carefully about, do they have all the supports that they need? So if I'm not there in the classroom, like peeking over their shoulder, they know what to do and they're going to be able to complete it. So again, the instructions are multimodal. If I have a reading, everything is linked like 100%. If they need to go to Flipgrid or Padlet or Seesaw or whatever, everything's just linked right in there. So it's just sort of they're going through the slides and reading and listening to my directions and completing the assignments. So then I would just post this in Google Classroom or whatever you might be using. Students have access to it, and then they know to just go through and then submit whatever it is. So I'll show you a couple examples of what this might look like. And there's no right way to do this. As we said at the beginning, just thinking about really making sure that it's clearly organized, that it's consistent. So whatever format you're using, they're experiencing a similar format each time so that they know what to expect, I think is really helpful. So as I mentioned, my son's in his school right now. He's going in person 2 days a week, and the rest of the 2 days he's home doing independent work. So he's doing this type of thing where he's getting some independent assignment that he has to work on. And then Wednesday, everybody's home and they do some synchronous Zooms for the whole class. So using this type of thing. I put a link of resources at the end of the slides. Slides Mania is a site where I found some amazing templates that have been really helpful. So they have a couple weekly planner templates that I've started using. I just really like the way they look. So this would be an example of an independent learning task. So this is a slide I would make. They have the lesson objective, they have the directions, like I've put these little click icons so that they know where they're supposed to click. They have their authentic resource they're working with, and then they have a video of me giving some directions. So they're not just reading the directions, they're also hearing me explain what it is that I'd like them to do. So this would be something I might send this home to students, and then they are working on it that day, and then they have to submit. So in this question, they have to read the authentic resource, answer some comprehension questions, and then go on Flipgrid and do a short recording of themselves. So this would be sort of an at-home assignment for them. I don't know how, if Bitmoji classrooms have, how widespread they are in the UK, but in the US, they have become incredibly popular. There's the Facebook group. I'm going to blank on the name of it. Bitmoji Crazed for Educators. That's what it's called. So the Facebook group. So I have had a lot of fun with these, and I know a lot of teachers are using them. So one of the things I found with the Bitmoji classrooms, so they're super nice. I think they build class culture also. I'll just go back to the topic we were just on. I just put like nice, inviting environment. So however you set them up. One thing I do find, however, if I'm going to use this for an independent learning task, they're sometimes set up just for students to explore how to set that, like explore this like bookcase of all these wonderful resources. But if I want this to be an assignment for students, like go follow this, I think it needs to be a little bit more clear. So I just added in this example, these little GIFs. And so 1, 2, 3, so they know exactly, I start here, I go 2, 3, 4, or whatever. This is the same assignment I just walked through, but just set up in a different format. So they again have the video to watch, they have the directions, and then they go through and complete the assignment. Again, if you like that format, then I would try to just be consistent with how you're sending things home to students so they know what to expect. The other framework I was using, so this admittedly was for a methods class that I taught over the summer, but I've started using, or for that class, I loved this 5E's framework. So this actually comes from science. They use this a lot in science classes. So 5E's, so engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And so maybe it's because the COVID threw everything up in the air and the world felt so uncertain, but I found myself just wanting to anchor myself in a frame, like, okay, give me a structure that I can hold on to like help keep me sane right now. And this one really, really helped me through the summer course that I taught. So I'll show you how I set it up. So again, this is a methods course. This isn't like for a class for high school or other age group language students. So this is a class I taught on input and interaction in world languages this summer. So the students had a little overview. So they had a little audio. So again, the multimodal, I had a little audio direction for them on what to expect with their outcomes for this unit. Engage is like a hook to get them in. So they had to watch a video and think about some thought questions. Explore, they had to look for, do additional readings and watch some more videos on the topic. Explain was where I did like a peer engagement. So then they had to go, I was really alternating between Padlet and Flipgrid, so that wanted to get them to interact with their peers. So they had to go to Padlet or Flipgrid and make a comment or record a video on the topic. And then elaborate with some like more information on the topic, and so on. And finally evaluate, they had to submit sort of a summative type of assignment. This could be done obviously differently, but this framework I thought really works nicely. And it also just gives you an example of another way to set up, an archive and level up, to set up an independent learning task. So this is also a template from Slidesmania that I just really liked it. So you can edit them to make, if you don't like the color scheme or whatever, but they're super helpful. So with having set up my independent learning task, I want to sort of move forward and think about the modes of communication. So interpersonal, interpretive, and presentational. The other framework that I've really been using pretty extensively is called the interactive model that I'll walk you through, and I'm going to show how it would look in an independent learning task. I think if you're like me, you've probably been thinking a lot about the synchronous versus asynchronous learning. So when I'm thinking about supporting students for interpretive or interpersonal and so on, I think a big question is, well, am I meeting with them live in the classroom or over Zoom, or are they working independently? So that's synchronous time or asynchronous time. So synchronous, I think, really, what can the students only do with me? So what are the things that if I'm with them, I really, this is something that's be really hard for them to do on their own. For me, that primarily would be, interpersonal, certainly. Other things as well, but like I think the main piece is that interpersonal communication is or anything that's interactive, anything that's community building, and so on and so forth. Those are things I really want to prioritize if I have synchronous time. So if you're just shifting to remote and you have some live session time with students, and that's your synchronous time. So those are the things I would be thinking about prioritizing. And then asynchronous time. So what are students able to do independently with maybe appropriate scaffolds? And I think more interpretive and presentational communication might lend themselves better to that. Of course, they could also do that with you, but they might be more successful if they're working independently. Oops, I'll just jump back with that. So just sort of shifting and thinking about how I want the students communicating and whether I want to prioritize that for whatever limited time we might have together, or for them working independently. So the interactive model is, again, another framework so that has just helped me structure a lot of my the way that I'm thinking about designing learning experiences for my students. And if you're not familiar with it, I would refer you, I'll walk through it quickly, but I will refer you to the a book publication by Actual called Enacting the Work of Language Instruction, High Leverage Teaching Practices by Schromm and Gleason. And they outline this particular model as one of their high leverage teaching practices. So it really starts with an authentic resource on whatever your theme or topic is, and then it moves students from interpreting the resource to engaging interpersonally, and then ultimately to some type of a presentational. So it's a nice sort of structure again to engage students. So it has a couple of phases, and then I have some examples to share. So preparation, so how am I getting students ready to engage in this, to access this authentic resource. Comprehension, so now I'm asking them to read or listen or view a first time, and then a second time they're going to go a little bit deeper. So they're going to read the resource a second time and do something, look, they're able to get more out of it with a second read. And then they're shifting now to interpersonal. So now that they've read it, okay, well, I'm going to discuss it. So they're talking about whatever it is they've read, listened to, or viewed. There's an extension, so you can then okay, now we're going to look at another authentic resource, but it's a different perspective. So same theme, but different perspective. And that can really extend the learning. So you can spend a day, if you have a particular theme, you can spend one day talking about one resource, the next day talking about another, and then you're looking at a bunch of different perspectives while you're recycling kind of the vocabulary and the thematic concepts that you're working through. And then ultimately leads to a creativity phase where you're saying, okay, I'm going to now have students create some kind of a product or resource that's connected to whatever the authentic resource is. So it's just sort of a structure for moving from interpretive to interpersonal to presentational. So this is one, I don't know, more and more I've been drawing on this one and just find it just incredibly helpful in this environment, but also for in-person. I just think it's really an effective model. So I'll share two examples of what this looks like through an independent learning task. So the first one's in French and the second one is a Spanish example. So here I'm using that weekly planner template that I shared before. So on the Monday, they've got 3 steps they're doing. So they're kind of preparing, and then they're going to do the reading or viewing of the resource. And then we have a live session. So it's like a hybrid class. So on Tuesday, we're going to have a live class, and I'm really going to prioritize discussing the resource with the students. So this is a chance for us to be live together. So I'm going to try to do more interpersonal. And then they're going to shift to creativity and creating their own product when they're back home on the following Wednesday. So here, for example, you have, again, we have a video for them to help them. They have their learning target. And then for this example, they're going to be watching a video. French teachers out there might be familiar with it, called, it's a song by soprano Mon Précieux. So it's all about it's a really funny video. He's all about cell phone use, and he sort of falls in love with his cell phone, and it's a really fun video to watch. And so the question is, can cell phones replace face-to-face interaction? Given the increased use of technology, we're sort of discussing this important question. And then the students will need to make a vlog sort of arguing for or against cell phones. So we're going to start by having students go to Padlet. So I'm going to prepare them before they watch the video. And they're going to be looking at some stills from the music video Mon Précieux. And then I'm asking them to just describe what they see in the image. So here's just a screenshot from the Padlet. So they have a couple images of this music video with some questions. So what's happening in this image? Do you think families talk more or less when they have their cell phones out? What's happening here? So how do you feel when your cell phone doesn't have any more batteries? And the idea is the students are just sort of getting familiar with the content and responding. Oops, and this is another screenshot from the Padlet with a couple more still shots from the video that they're responding to. Then I'm asking the students to now, so comprehension, now we're actually going to watch the video, and they're doing this all independently. This is like an at-home assignment on that Monday remote day. So they're going to watch the music video. They have another sort of direction from me, and I'm asking them to fill in a graphic organizer. So they're watching the video while they're starting to sort of take notes on some of the things that they observe in the video. So their first question is, how does he use the cell phone? And I'm just watching the video, like not note the specific ways that the singer is using the cell phone. Then the next piece they're doing, I'm going to ask them to watch it again. And this time they're going to think, okay, do you think the singer is saying this is an advantage or a disadvantage of the cell phone? So they've noted all the ways he's using it and so on and so forth. And again, they have a video direction from me, just sort of quickly explaining what it is. They have a link to the graphic organizer they're filling out, and then they're handing it in Google Classroom. So this would be their sort of Monday assignment, so pre coming in to class. So discussion the next day, if we're meeting live over Zoom, the idea is they're just supposed to bring that, they've completed the assignment before, and then the live time we have on Zoom, I'm going to dedicate this time, because it's live, synchronous time, to actually supporting interaction. So I want them discussing, I've got some questions ready for them, and so on. So I'm just sort of telling them, be ready to talk about this when we come together. And then the following day, they have another independent task where now they need to create a short like vlog video where they're sort of like, I think cell phones are good, I think cell phones are bad, and here's why. And they're just going to submit the video for me on Google Classroom. So it's just a way to sort of show how that interactive model can be mapped onto an independent learning task for the students, sort of like mixing independent and live synchronous time with the teacher. Here's another example for Spanish. So it's a similar setup where they're doing some independent work on Monday. There's a discussion Tuesday. However, I think this one I've set up where they're not, this is like fully remote. They're working independently, and then they're also then shifting into a creativity phase. So this time the resource is a print resource. So this one they're looking at benefits of dance and thinking about how it contributes to a healthy lifestyle. So the preparation before they actually read the authentic resource, I want them just sort of like jotting down ideas. So just sort of like activating some background knowledge. What do they already know? Okay, what could be healthy? So they need to write down some possible benefits in each of these blanked out boxes and then submit it in Google Classroom. And again, there's a video to support so the multimodal piece. Then there's like a drag and drop activity. So you could set this up differently. If you're using Seesaw, they have an amazing way to drag and drop things within the Seesaw platform. If not, this could be like a Google Doc where the students just have to like copy and paste the images to where they think they match. So the idea is that they're reading chunks of the resource and matching the images to it. So, okay, I think this one is talking about here it's helping your heart stay strong. So, okay, this must be the right image for this and so on. And then I do like to have students actually read out loud. Maybe I'm kind of old school in that way. So in this example, I'm asking them to use Screencastify to actually read the resource. And as they're reading it, use some gestures. So it helps your heart. It makes your brain strong. So I'm asking them to read it while they're showing some gestures and just do a quick recording of them, just to make sure they're really reading it and work on some pronunciation. And then if this example is fully remote, so that synchronous time, I think one thing that's really hard if you're not live, supporting the interpersonal is really obviously challenging if you're not seeing the students live. A site that I've used a lot and had success with is Flipgrid, and students can record a video and then listen to each other and respond. And one thing that's nice also, if they don't want to show their face, they can set up a little like emoji over their face or whatever, something like that, which make it a little bit fun. They have to listen to each other and post a response. Now, you can't prevent them from writing out the script and reading it, which of course makes it presentational. But I think at the very least, we're trying to simulate some level of interpersonal for the students here. And then the creativity phase here, what we're asking them to do is make a public service announcement. I think you should dance. Dance is important because da 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 da. So it's just a couple examples to show you how that model can really work with an independent learning task. And I hope you like this framework. For me, again, it's just I was like, I need a structure. And this one just sort of walks me through the phases that I want to be thinking about for my students. The last thing I wanted to touch on was another like really big challenge for virtual or hybrid teaching, and of course hybrids including some level of virtual, is group work. So if you haven't been, or I'm sure you guys all did back in March at the very least, or you've seen some stuff going on this year, but getting students in groups on Zoom, if you're doing breakout groups, it's really challenging because you're not seeing the students. I think that's been one of the hardest things that I've found. So if you put students in the group in the classroom, you're walking around and checking on them, and you can kind of scan the room and see what's going on. And that's just not happening when they're in breakout rooms. You have no idea what they're saying or what they're doing or who needs help, or is this too much time, not enough time. So I think that's been a real challenge. And I don't have the perfect solution, but this is sort of some of the things that have been working or helping rather for myself. So monitoring the student work is hard. Making sure that they're actually using the target language if you do breakout rooms is equally challenging. And then just in general, getting the students to produce the target language over Zoom is very challenging. The students are reluctant to speak and so on. So sort of two things these have been my go-tos for getting the students to interact, for me to monitor what they're actually doing when they're working in breakout groups. So Google Jamboard and then Google Slides. So I just wanted to share a couple examples here. So Google Jamboard I only have discovered it since the fall, but I don't know how long it's been around. But just sort of an interactive platform. So when I put the students in breakout groups, the sort of number one thing that I've been doing is making sure that I have some way to like at least view remotely what it is they're working on and how far they're progressing. So using Jamboard or Google Slides where you can see live like how far they're working. So I would set up like group 1, group 2, group 3 on Jamboard and give them their task to work in groups for however many minutes. And then you can kind of see how many students have finished how much in whatever, and keep an eye on it. And if it looks like one group hasn't done anything, then that's the group I'm going to pop into and see if they need help. Oh, and I see Joe just popped in 60 ideas for Jamboard in the chat. Thank you so much. So it's just I think what's important is to have a way to kind of monitor, even though you can't hear them, you're able to sort of monitor what they're working on. So this is an example. So they have a few things there. So one of the things you can do, the Jamboard's nice, and they can put like kind of sticky notes and just post their thoughts. If they're working in a group, they can post on it. Just another example, and this is from a teacher on Twitter who shared this. So this is kind of like a 4 corners. What did you do over the weekend? And they just sort of pop in a few different things. And then another example from the same teacher. So let's talk about this image. She's given a little bit of a scaffold. So here's some of the expressions you might be using. And then students are asked to sort of put in little sticky notes to describe it. So that's something that helps you keep an eye a little bit on what students are working on. This is another one from a different teacher using Jamboard also, where the students had to ask, what did you look like you're a child? And one student's sort of drawing as the other one is orally narrating, hopefully in the target language. But just some different ways that you might think about using it, but just keeping an eye, that's like the best way that I found to keep an eye on it. The other one, so similar to Jamboard, is Google Slides. So you can see live. I've used this also a ton for students to take notes on it. This is an example from a teacher on Twitter, Meredith White. I think she's done webinars for you guys, and she's using, I think it's just such a great idea to use grid view. So you have a bunch of slides set up, and then you're kind of watching all the slides to see what students are doing. To get grid view, you just go to view and click grid view. And this is just nice. You can see again, like, okay, who's working on what? Is there a group that's like barely started? Is there a group that looks like they're done? You know, and it helps you monitor what they're working on. It doesn't help you monitor what they're saying. This is true, but it's sort of like the best way I've found, at least, to kind of get a sense of it. The other thing you might think about is having students record themselves if they're in breakout groups. So using a site like Vocaroo. So if they're in groups and you want them to discuss something, you can ask them to record. Vocaroo gives them, it's a free recording site if you haven't used it. And then just they can record themselves, and they get a little link from Vocaroo, and they could stick that on the Jamboard or the Google slide, so you can get a sense that they're at least using the target language in some way. I've also used Online Voice Recorder a lot. It's another free site, although this one downloads an MP3, and then they could just hand that in also. If you wanted them to record a video, Screencastify could be another way. So at the very least, if they're in that breakout room, it's a way to get a little bit of a sense of what they're actually working on. I think some of the big keys that I've found with the breakout room work, so the online group work, is having some accountability. So where we might just say in a classroom, like, oh, talk to your partner for a couple of minutes on this topic, and then we're going to share out. You know, I think that, you know, that might work perhaps if you're with more advanced learners and they're more able to work independently, more responsibly. But certainly with the students, you know, middle and high school students, I think it might be a little bit more challenging. So having some like thing that they must do that you're going to collect or work on or something, place to take notes, even if it's just a discussion, so they know, and then being ready to share out when they come back is also really helpful. So you might ask them to designate a person ahead of time so that they don't feel like put on the spot that somebody's going to have to share. But just some of the things that I found. I don't think it's perfect. It's certainly not quite the same as being in the classroom with the students, but definitely this are some ways to try to tackle some of these issues. So I just want to give a couple quick takeaways, and then I'd love to answer some questions if there are any. I want to just go back sort of the principles for me, and you might have, you know, your own essential principles, but just sort of like what's driving me, what's sort of keeping me going. For me, again, it's really keeping a communicative focus, making sure that I'm really thinking about proficiency-based instruction, high level of target language use as much as possible, and giving students an opportunity to use the language meaningfully. And then the extra layer of the hybrid and virtual is just that like organization, consistency, and scaffolding, and so on, that really becomes even more crucial when students are at home working independently on material. The class community piece, I think that's a big one for me this year. It's just, okay, how am I getting the students to feel comfortable, setting clear expectations for them, and getting to know the learners, and really being consistent and clear with the way that I'm presenting material to them. And I think it's a part of a strong class community. And then, you know, really supporting students to work in those three modes, that interactive model framework. Again, that's just been such a crucial piece for me in my instruction. So moving them from interpretive to interpersonal to presentational, using authentic resources has just been really a game changer for myself and for a lot of the teachers that I'm working with. And then that group work, virtual group work, really needs those additional supports, accountability, giving students roles, and some ways for you to sort of check and monitor what students are working on, and whether they're using their target language, if that's something that's possible to monitor. I will share the slides, but I have, just to show you quickly, two sets of slides with links on them. So all of the resources that I've mentioned I've put links to everything. So I'll share the links for you guys, or the slides, in a minute. But just to let you know, you have them there. So anything I referenced, you should find links to here. And with that, I'm going to pause and just say thank you and see if there are any questions. And before I do that, right now I am popping in the chat box the link to the slides, so everyone should be able to access them. So let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen if I can figure out how to do that. I have lost Zoom. I don't know where it is anymore. Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh, screen sharing, stop share. There we go.
Hey.
Okay, I'm back.
That was amazing. Absolutely
Right.
amazing. I loved the structure that you described, the difference between, or the things that you focus on that you do synchronously and the things that you can focus on asynchronously. That was amazing. And the last section, when you were going through the different ways in which you combine tools together in the workflow, was inspirational. I thought it was fantastic. And I agree with you. Meredith White's suggestion of using grid view is brilliant.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Yeah.
Could you do a similar thing in PowerPoint? Like, for example, presumably you could assign different students to different slides and then get them to embed audio into different slides. That would work in the same way, wouldn't it?
So I don't really use, I don't use PowerPoint. Is there a live synchronous, the way that Google Slides, you can see live any edits kind of as they're happening. Can you do the same thing with the Microsoft tools?
You can definitely share a PowerPoint, I'm sure. Yeah, like yourself, I've not done that. I always go to Google tools for like collaborative stuff, but I'm sure it's possible. I've definitely shared like a Word document, the online version of Word before, but I don't know if you see in real time if it works exactly in the same way. I'm sure someone in the session can tell us, but I presume you can do it in the same way. Helen, did you have an insight?
Say, is it all right if we all just say thanks?
Yeah, of course.
Some people have to go, and because we do, it's absolutely lovely. We go on, but it would be lovely to see everybody so that we can all say thanks, because it's nice to read the thanks in the chat and then go on. So, I mean, you've just got loads and loads of thanks, saying thank you, and, you know, really echoing what Joe has summarized there. Absolutely. What was it? What did you say? Amazing. Or
amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, you guys are too nice.
If people are not too shy, it would be lovely if you could show your video so that we could just do a nice little picture now, and then we can all also applaud. You can open up if you want to open up your mics as well, so that you can do that as well. Oh, yeah, lovely. We're seeing a few more people. Let's see a few more people. That'd be lovely. It's just a nice feeling, I think, isn't it, for you to see your audience?
It is, yeah.
Come on, Helen McFarlane.
Good to see everyone.
There
hey,
she is.
Helen.
There you are. Negin, where are you? Christina. Why has it got Helen Myers without my... Are there two Helen Myerses?
There's only one Helen Myers, I think you'll find.
I think it could be someone just, my doppelganger or whatever it is. Lovely to see you. So I'll take some pictures now. So here goes. And if more could add, that'd be great. 1, 2, 3. Oh, you weren't smiling then, Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I was looking at the chat. Sorry.
Good to have you there.
Okay, here we go.
Here goes. And 1, 2, 3. That's lovely. Great. And I will add that to the page. But really, if everybody would like to clap, thank you very much.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Really, really good. And thank you very much to, I mean, we're going to carry on with questions, but before people have to go, thanks so much to you, Joe, for, you know, yet again, he has this wonderful network, and Catherine, just brilliant to have found you as well. So
thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely.
So, Joe.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm not sure if we had, I think any questions that came up, I think that let's have a quick look. Yeah, just lots of people saying how much they enjoyed it. It was brilliant.
I think there were quite a few questions, because what happened was you'd say something, it would then spark people saying, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Mm-hmm. I mean, certainly.
Sorry.
Well, just as an observation, I realized that, you know, we're not all at the same position, are we? Because some people, when we started this back in, whenever it was, for us, it was last March, but some people had already been doing it for 2 months. So we're all at different stages. Different schools have
Yeah.
taken on different platforms. So certainly what this is telling me is that there's still a need for us to revisit some of the things that we've looked at before, because we're all learning. We've tried things out, and then, you know, the big thing that I got from what you're saying, Catherine, and I think a lot of us doing, is almost limiting what you use, deciding which of the tools you want to use, and then just limiting it to that so the children aren't confused. And people were, you know, so agreeing with a lot of the things you were saying.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's so many, it's just overwhelming to think about all the different tech tools, which I'm sure Joe knows all about all of them in great detail. And it is overwhelming. And there's different, you know, so the Microsoft question is a great one. And there's different tools you might use, but to accomplish a similar goal, right? And yeah, and definitely deciding, okay, I'm just going to pick these few ones that are really crucial for me.
But we can learn from the different platforms, because certainly the things that you
absolutely
about, I was thinking, so how could I do that within Microsoft?
Right, with whatever
and
you're
Microsoft,
using.
I think it seems they sort of catch up after some things have happened in Google or elsewhere. Then they've basically got to catch up, haven't they, to keep the market?
Right.
And what they are about to do with, I mean, I think they've already got breakout rooms, haven't they, in Microsoft? Thing that
they're coming. They're coming next month.
Oh, they're
apparently.
coming.
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah, because I had an official email from Microsoft saying they're coming next month. So should be. I mean, you can replicate sort of the functionality by having like private channels for different groups. But I think, as Catherine said, one of the big issues is you don't really know what the students are doing if they're speaking their target language. I mean, I remember watching a video by Russell Stannard a couple of days ago, and he was suggesting that you can go into a breakout room and not have your video on, just your audio on, and they don't know that you're there. I don't know if legally if you're allowed to do that. Presumably you are. And then you can say, "Oh, well done, everyone," and everyone goes, "Oh, wait, so the teacher's watching me." You know, well, that might be one way. Like in the old days of having a language lab, and you didn't know if the teacher was listening to you or not. So it's a similar sort of idea. One question that did come up is about, do you have any sort of safeguarding issues around the students having their videos on? Now, obviously, at university level, maybe that's not as much of an issue, but at K-12, would that be an issue in some schools? Because it certainly is an issue in the UK.
Do you mean for them not turning it on, or privacy issues around? Yeah,
the school decides that the children are not allowed to turn on their videos for safeguarding reasons.
You know, I haven't heard that. I have a teacher who was telling me their school uses iPads, and apparently, so they're on Zoom with the iPads. But then when she assigns them something, for some reason, they can't keep their video on. So she actually cannot see them when they're working on whatever it is. I've more heard schools that are trying to mandate keeping the video on. That's what we're seeing a lot more of, which I do think is concerning. To be, you know, the students may not, for very good reason, feel comfortable. We don't, their home situation, they might not have their own space. So I think that's a little bit more what I'm seeing. Certainly privacy issues around recording has been very strict, and not recording with students, but that's more the issue that I'm seeing. I wanted to just comment too, because I see a comment about students that don't have technology access or Wi-Fi at home. And obviously, yes, the independent learning task, right, that type is gonna, if they don't have access to it at home, then they can't reach it. So you might be doing a packet. There are some lower tech options for recording. So good old Google Voice, where you just do a phone call, and they can do a recording on Google Voice and submit some language output there. But I just wanted to acknowledge that is an extra layer of challenge if that's something that you're facing in your district. I know other teachers would, the district, I think there was more of a scramble when I saw in March, when people were unprepared for what happened, and then districts have tried to catch up to give Wi-Fi access to students that don't have it. But so some places some were online and some were sending packets home, and it is an imperfect and challenging system.
Hi,
just to acknowledge that.
Can I just come in here? I think what's really striking is that for all our students, whether we're in Wales or England or Northern Ireland or Scotland, there is a real disparity or a sense of disparity between the provision that's being made for our students. And it seems really quite unfair for various reasons, either geographical or a little bit of a, it could be a postcode lottery, or it could be social. So there are many different factors which impact on our students' ability to engage with the learning. I'm thinking from my point of view, or from my students' point of view, with the French or German or whichever language. But I think as well, it depends very much on the decision that is made by the local government or the local ministries.
Right.
So while in some areas, the students may be expected to take the exam, others may be expected to create lots and lots and lots of assignments, assessments throughout the year, which will be assessed in order to determine their outcome. So there is such a lot of disparity, and you're talking about whether there are mountains in the local area, which we have, of which we have many. So there are geographical boundaries, there are political boundaries, there are social and economic boundaries placed whereby parents might not be able to afford the software, the hardware, or there may be lots of children in the same family who may have a claim on, say, 1 or 2 laptops. So it really, really is a huge difficulty. And I think teachers, we're all doing our very best to contend with political, geographical, social, economic, so many factors. And it doesn't make life easy.
No, you're so right. It's we're dealing with the same issues here. Students who don't have a laptop, where they're using a cell phone, to access virtual. I mean, how can you learn that way? So, I echo what. Yeah, very well said. It's
yes, and I suppose
an incredible challenge.
And in the end, it does come down to a political thing, doesn't it? In that, our government did at one point say, yes, those people who haven't got them, we will give them laptops. So laptops came, connectivity came, and then they were told, well, you're not going to have them anymore. So, I mean, that is a political thing that we can get involved with in the political sphere, can't we? But partly you feel that you do feel for it, but you don't therefore stop trying and doing things, do you? And we've definitely have had some sessions, haven't we, Joe, from people who are in very, very disadvantaged areas, who've shown us ways that you can use the cell phone to be able to at least do something. So it may not be ideal, but almost at least acknowledging that for some people that might be their only means, and therefore here are some techniques that you could use, but it's never going to be ideal. We don't.
No, it's true. So.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a great session. I was just going to say Google Voice. We've never had Google Voice in the UK.
Really?
It's been around for years and years and years. Like when I was in the classroom, I can remember Google Voice and thinking, when's it going to come to the UK? And it's never, ever, ever come.
Funny.
Which is
funny. That was like probably one of the first tech tools that when I was like, I'm going to start using more tech, and Google Voice was it. So. Is there something equivalent where kids can make a phone call?
I've always said Vocaroo is similar. There's also obviously you've got Flipgrid now, and you mentioned about the emoji, and you can pixelate the screen as well if you want to, or if you really want to, you can hide the whole screen with an image. Or there's quicker conversations. I don't know if you've heard of that, which is sort of similar. I'll just put that in the chat. So it's called Quicker Conversations, which is very nice. But I think just a simple way of recording audio. Vocaroo's been there for years, and it's great, I think. But we've never ever had Google Voice.
Oh, isn't that funny? I was like, okay, whatever technology you have at home, do you have an old school landline, and you can just pick up the phone and dial the number and do a recording? But so interesting. Okay.
I was interested to see that you were using Google Classroom. Was there pressure at all at a university to use, say, Moodle or something like that? Or is that normal? Is that quite usual to use Google Classroom in a university setting?
No, not at the university level. So in the public schools, it's very common. Public school teachers using Google, lots of Google Classroom, or Canvas is another big one. But no, my university uses Blackboard.
Right.
And then I'm in the College of Education, and we pushed to get to ask BU to give us a Google Class. We have Google, the whole suite. So can you just add Google Classroom, because we're working with teachers, so it's just more relevant. So we were able to get that added just for our
Right.
college.
Right.
And then within my college, you know, there's maybe a handful of us that are using it, but for me, it's just, it's much more relevant. It's what, you know, my students are using. So, and I just like it a lot better than Blackboard, if any of you have used Blackboard.
Yeah.
A little old fashioned, but yeah, no, it's not common.
Fantastic. And do you use Google Meet at all, or do you just use Zoom normally?
So I'm personally using Zoom. There's a number of schools that for some reason they said you're not allowed to use Zoom. So some teachers had to use Google Meet. I think Google Meet initially did not have the breakout room feature. So my understanding is that's now been added to Google Meet. But I was a lucky one because I was teaching online courses for 2 years and had access to Zoom. So I was already familiar with Zoom when the shutdown started, which was helpful. But yeah, so I'm just using Zoom. I've attended Google Meet a couple of times, but I think Zoom's really easy to use. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Meet has got better and better. I enjoy using
right.
Meet.
Yeah.
Likewise, Microsoft Teams, but I think Zoom feels like a pair of slippers, doesn't it? It just feels very
Yes.
familiar, and it just works normally. It just, you know, you can hear. You don't have this whole thing. Can you hear me? Can you? You know, I was in another webinar, using another webinar tool a couple of days ago, and it was like, you know, what do you mean you can't hear me? Type thing. You know, it's like, you know, and then we went into Zoom, and it was all fine. But anyway.
Right.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. I think maybe we probably, Helen, it's time to wrap up now, would you say? Or?
Yes, it's fine. So thank you very much. We've done all of the thank yous, and it's been great to see everybody again. So if I just stop the recording now, shall I?
Yeah, if that's okay.
I'll stop the live stream and stop the recording.
How many people did we have on the live stream today, Helen? Do you know?
There were 4 when I started.
Hey,
So I didn't look afterwards.